Are you trying to improve your programming skills but still feeling stuck? Maybe you've been coding for weeks or months and you're wondering, why am I not getting any better? Well, today I'm sharing my top 5 tips that will take your programming skills to the next level, whether you're just starting or looking to level up. I'm going to be ranking these tips from least to most important, so stick around to find out what the number 1 tip is. Let's dive in. Let's kick things off with tip number 1, which is read other people's code. Now, when you're just starting out, it's natural to focus only on your own code, but trust me, reading code written by others is a fantastic way to learn new techniques and patterns. It's just like looking at an answer to a puzzle. You're going to see approaches that you might not have thought of yourself. Start by exploring GitHub. Look at small projects related to things you're learning or projects that you want to build, like a basic calculator app or a to-do list app. Focus on understanding how someone structured their project, such as why did they name variables the way they did and how did they organize files. I remember reading a small open source project on GitHub. At first it was overwhelming, but then I noticed how the developer used comments and clean functions to break things down. It taught me the importance of writing readable code. Now, even if you don't understand the code fully at first, stick with it. It's one of the fastest ways to grow and learn. Moving on to tip number 2, which is break down problems. Now, one of the biggest mistakes beginners make is trying to solve a problem all at once. Programming is all about problem solving, and the best way to do that is to break a big task into smaller, more manageable pieces. So here's how to approach it. Let's say you're building a calculator. Instead of coding everything at once, start by focusing on just one function, like addition. Test it, once it works, move on to subtraction, then multiplication, and so on. I remember my first big project, which was a weather app. I kept trying to get everything to work in one go, and it was a disaster. Then I broke it down into smaller pieces, so first fetching the weather API, then displaying the data, then styling it. Suddenly everything clicked. By breaking down problems, you make progress step by step, and trust me, small wins keeps you motivated. Now for tip number 3, we have build projects, not just tutorials. Now tutorials are great for learning the basics, but they can only take you so far. Now many beginners get stuck in what's called tutorial hell, which is where you watch endless tutorials without ever actually applying what you've learned. Real growth happens when you start building your own projects, things that you find exciting or useful. Start small. Maybe build a to-do list app, a personal blog, or even automate something simple in your daily life. Don't worry if it's not perfect. The goal is to learn by doing. Going back to my weather app, it wasn't pretty and I made tons of mistakes, but I learned more in that process than from any tutorial. For example, I had to figure out how to use APIs, how to handle user input, and debug errors that I didn't expect. Projects force you to solve real-world problems, and that's where the learning happens.
Very nice.
Coming in at tip number 4, we have learn debugging early. Debugging is an essential skill for any programmer. It's how you figure out what's wrong in your code, and more importantly, why it's happening. The better you get at debugging, the faster you'll improve. To do this, you can use the built-in debugger in your IDE, and you can also just use print statements. Also learn how to read error messages. They tell you exactly what's wrong, and often even where the issue is. I once spent hours trying to figure out why a loop wasn't working. Then I used a debugger and realised I had an off by 1 error in my logic. That's when I realised that debugging isn't just about fixing code, it's about understanding it. A takeaway is to embrace debugging. It's your best friend in programming. Finally, we've reached tip number 5, which is to practice every day. This is the most important tip because consistency is key to getting better at anything, including programming. Now, you don't need to code for hours every day. Even 20 to 30 minutes can make a huge difference over time. Set a daily goal. Maybe it's solving one coding challenge on LeetCode or adding one small feature to your own project. The important thing is to stay consistent. When I started coding, I set a goal to code every day for 30 minutes to 1 hour. At first, it felt like nothing, but after a few weeks, I realised how much I had learned. It's like going to the gym. Small, consistent efforts add up. Programming is a skill, and like any skill, the more you practice, the better you'll get. And there you have it, my top 5 tips to get better at programming. Which tip resonated with you the most? Let me know in the comments below, and if you found this video helpful, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you don't miss out on future tips and tutorials. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.